That's how we own it.
Peace, family. It's Tamika D. Mallory.
And it's your boy, Mysonne, the General.
And we are your host of Street Politicians,
the place where the streets and politics meet.
We're back on set.
Yes, sir.
We were separated for a little
we
while.
We had a little distant travel that we had to do.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
to a lot of folks.
A lot of folks.
Yeah, a lot of folks. We spent a lot of time dealing with a lot of death, unfortunately. A lot of police violence, a lot of community trauma over the last few weeks. But we're back on set today, and this show is really, really packed. We're going to be talking about COVID, but not from the perspective of the vaccinations or the health risk, which we definitely are going to do a show that addresses that particular topic. But this is going to be more about our children and what has happened to them mentally, emotionally, and most important, I guess it's not more important than your mental health. Your mental health is number one, but very important is educationally. They say that Black children will lose at least 1 year of education just in the shifting of moving from in school to out of school, which, by the way, schools in the inner city are not educating our kids the way that they should be anyway. We know that. We know that. And especially young Black males, we know are really, really struggling in the public school educational system. And not just that, there's some charter schools that I've heard from folks are not really working as well as they should, as well. And so just the education system in general, like every other system every other institution that exists within this country needs an overhaul. I have thrown out the word reform. Sometimes I might say, because you gotta cover yourself, because the Negroes will find the day that you said.
Yeah, you said reform. I seen it right there.
You
lying. That's how I told you you're a fraud.
Yes. So no. So because I've been saying reform for so long, I catch myself. And in fact, my book was written a while ago, and now that it's out and I've been reading it over and over and studying the material, and also first of all, I had to read it, which was difficult, for the audio version.
Congratulations for the book.
Thank you very much. It's coming May 11th, just a few days, and it's going to be released. It's crazy how this process started somewhere around July or August of last year. And now here I am,
with trying, book.
It's really coming out, oh my God. But anyway, one of the things that I wish I could go back and change, which will be a part of my next book, because I'm in the process of writing my memoir. But it says the word reform. It talks about reforming systems. And of course, over the course of the year, as I really have done a deep dive and have grown in my own understanding of what has to happen in this movement, I realized that reform won't work. It will not work. I've thrown that out. And even though it says reform in the book as the title of one of the areas where I'm talking about what needs to happen with systems, if you read the content, it talks about overhauling. It talks about tearing down and rebuilding.
Transform.
Yeah, transform. That's a good word.
That's my
You're very good with words. Transforming, just dismantling, really, and rebuilding new systems. So education is one of those institutions where that needs to happen, transformation.
That's right.
And what we know is, because they're saying 1 year, right, that these kids going from school every day, which is not that great, to being at home, even finding a spot in your house where you could sit
and really just being a parent and having to remote school, both of my sons doing remote school, and just finding two separate places in the house for them to do their own schoolwork.
Right.
It's almost impossible,
because if you sit them together,
that's never going to happen. So you sit one of them on one side, you sit the other one on that side, and then one of them is talking too loud, or they hear the other one, then the other one got the headphones, and then the other one gets up because he gets a little bored. He gets a break before the other one does.
It's too much.
And he's in the screen, and you
much.
telling him to sit down, and they got breaks at different times. So it's a
lot. So you have that. Then, of course, the teachers trying to figure it out, other students. It was so much. So that went on for months, just trying to figure that out. And don't let your teacher get COVID. because then the
Then the
teachers
whole
out,
class
the
is out.
parents is
Yeah.
out, all of this stuff happened to try to get the education to operate online, and I still don't think that they figured it out 100%. And now it's May. The year is about to end. So a whole year of education, maybe even a year and some change, these kids have lost. What do we do? And really, honestly, if you think about it, it is more than a year at this point, because this began last year in March, right? Yeah. So this is, really serious. And we have a bunch of guests that are coming on today that are going to talk about COVID-19 and education and what we've got to do to try to get our kids up to speed.
Can't wait to see what they got to say, because I need some help.
Yes, this is why.
Helps me.
I don't have any more children, because listen here.
Need some help for my kids.
But people who have kids,
it's a lot.
You're the strongest.
You know what it is for me, I think the conventional way of teaching is just something I adhere to. Even if you homeschooling your children, just separating kids to where they're not able to interact is very difficult.
Yeah.
Because it puts them on these games. If you are a parent, then you know Minecraft, Fortnite, and Roblox control your home, especially in these days. They don't even want to go outside. Yeah. My kids was into soccer. They wanted to go out soccer all the time. Now they want to sit on a game, and I have to force them to. They only can play those games on the weekends, because they would take over the game.
Super Mario had us. It was like crack.
Nah, it wasn't like Fortnite. It wasn't like Fortnite.
Super Mario was a big deal. Only thing
Super Mario was tough though.
Super Mario was a big deal. You stayed in the house. Not just Super Mario. Just when it was the regular Mario. Because remember, Super Mario came second. When it was regular Mario, you were in the house trying to figure out how to get that thing to climb over and go up the wall and do the thing.
But it wasn't like Fortnite. The thing is this: the difference with these games, right? Your friends had to come to your house to play.
Technology,
right? Technology. They playing with their friends from across the world. My cousins live in Baltimore. They on the game and they talking to each other. They go run, and it's like and it's so loud. It completely takes over your house. This shit is the craziest thing ever.
So my thought of the day today, and speaking of transforming systems, I just listen. I just be trying to figure out, why do we have to fight everybody all the time about everything? It's just too much. That's literally my thought of the day. Why do we have to fight everybody all the time about everything? Why? So the reason why I bring this up is because in New York City, the city council, of which, because folks say, y'all don't do nothing. Y'all ain't never changed no laws. You don't do nothing.
Y'all there
nothing.
Clout chasing.
That's also what we do. Meanwhile, in a place like New York, the other thing is, you go and working in other states. What's happening in your own state? Well, let me tell you. So, first of all, many of the people in office, elected officials in the state of New York, are people we fought to get them in office.
This is a fact.
And not just, when I say that, I'm not talking about I just endorse the candidate or I make you donate. That's the funniest thing. Come almost 12 o'clock, right before these deadlines.
You got to donate,
I call you and say, my son, you got to open up your pocketbook, or you don't have a pocketbook, but your bank account. And you got to donate to this one, that one, this one. You wait a minute, it's too many people. And it's usually a slate. And unfortunately, you have to at least do $250, which we usually donate more than that. You've done probably about $500 per person. I have been forced to do more.
And I'm broke.
Listen, they come to me and they're like, we need the $1,000
We're going to need some laws passed for this money, man.
Yeah. We do it. We've been doing it, right? The reason why $250 is significant is because you get matching funds 8-to-1. So for every $250, each dollar gets an $8 match from the city.
Okay.
So that goes into their campaign fund. And so when you donate $200, then $250, then that's
$2,000.
So it's $2,000 that they receive just off of that. So they want you to donate $250 if you can't do nothing else. If you can't do anything else, they need you to do $250. Anything else that you donate above that helps them pay their staff and do other things, right? And there's usually a limit on the amount that you can donate as a regular person, and definitely as a corporation, to any candidate. They have like a $4,000 minimum. It just depends on what it is that they're running for. Okay. So, we've been doing that. So now that's one, is that we actually do take our own personal money and ensure that we get certain types of elected officials in office. But beyond that, when I say fighting, what I mean is that we've had to actually work to transform the political landscape in New York, to start getting more candidates who are more radical, even in terms of their thinking. And I like using the word radical because that pisses people off. In terms,
get pissed off, radical.
Yeah, no. So when we say that, what we're talking about, these are people who are super liberal, super progressive, right? And that's important because these are folks, and even in their super progressive state, we still got to fight even our friends to be like, yo, we need you to push harder. We need you to go harder, because they're up against systems that immediately, once they walk in the door talking about we need to end qualified immunity, the whole system blows up. No, we don't want to do it. We don't want to do it. But these are individuals who work to really push the envelope in terms of the things we care about. From New York State, where we just legalized marijuana. Let's talk about this story really quickly. The state legalized marijuana. Last session, they were supposed to do it. It came down to the last few moments, and our friend, Senator Brian Benjamin, somebody we helped him get elected. We worked with him. Right. We advised him, even though sometimes I have to fight Brian, because Brian, he's like, I can't be doing everything y'all need me to do. It just ain't gonna happen. But he still understands why we sent him to the Senate, right? So he, in last session, was one of the only people who held out his vote. And everybody was pissed off because they wanted to see marijuana they wanted to see marijuana become legalized. He said no, because he did not feel that, number one, there was enough being done on the expungement side for people who are currently
that means
jail.
People who was in jail for selling weed was getting their records cleaned.
That's
and there wasn't enough
he wanted to do more on that. But the main reason was because he felt that the licensing, in terms of people being able to actually sell and get in the business of
was
marijuana,
those people who they locked up they told was criminals. Right. Now they gonna need to get a little licensing so they can make some legal money with marijuana. Because you done locked them up and said it was illegal. So now give them an opportunity to make some money while it's legal.
Right.
Translation.
Except not necessarily people. I don't know this. I don't want to put this on him. I don't know if it's folks that might have a felony conviction, because I don't know exactly how that works. But he's definitely trying to make sure that more black and brown people have access into the pipeline so that they can get in the business of marijuana, right?
Well, I think a lot of them, people are saying that they want those who were convicted of marijuana to have a certain percentage to be just advocated and put to them. So that, I think that's fair.
Right. So he didn't feel that was happening because
BB. You're doing good, BB.
Because in the state of New York, first of all, one of the things that folks are supposed to be checking for me, and I really want to know, I've been told that all the Republicans that are in the Senate and the Assembly in the state of New York are white. I have not been able to have anybody show me one that is of color. Now, I might be wrong, but if I am wrong, I'm wrong by one or two.
You said no senators are black?
No state senators and or assembly members that are Republican in New York. It might be the city council, too. I'm going to have to check that out. I could be wrong about city council.
I wouldn't doubt it.
But from the state level, I have not found one. And so some other folks are doing the research to make sure. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong by one person, maybe two people.
It's a little sprinkle.
Everybody is white. And so the Republicans, and of course at the time, we had that IDC, which was the independent caucus of people who got elected as Democrats, but they went into a small caucus and started to lean and vote with the Republicans. So the governor, Cuomo, who y'all just love Cuomo because you see him on TV, and he's doing such a good job with COVID, which he's not doing more than he's supposed to do as a governor. He's doing his job. He's charismatic. He speaks well. He's fine. Yes, he is, ladies. I know the white boy is fine. Excuse me, I mean, not so white boy. The white man is fine. I get it, ladies. I know. But nonetheless, when you look at his record in New York State, Governor Cuomo has been extremely problematic. And in some instances, I would go as far as to say that he and his administration have actually discriminated against Black and brown people, and particularly poor people. Now, I could go harder, but I'm not for the purpose of this conversation. So we, right, advocated to get a Black woman back in her seat as the speaker in the state, which is which is Andrea Stewart Cousins, okay, a Black woman.
Shout out to Andrea.
We helped get a Black woman who is now in the process of investigating the NYPD and investigating Donald Trump as a New York resident. Her name is Letitia James, and she is the Attorney General of the state. We helped get her elected. Yes, we helped to get several progressives in key positions within the state. And Brian Benjamin, who we just went through what he's been working on. This is a man who was specifically one of our candidates that we ran and helped get elected.
But they're going to say representation don't really mean
no,
that.
I'm not talking about just representation. I'm talking
what they doing.
But we're not talking about representation. We just gave you just some of the things.
Tangibles.
Just some of the things.
Okay.
He's running for controller now. I'm supporting him. This show is not, the street politicians is not involved, but I'm supporting him.
We do not confirm nor deny any support.
No, I'm supporting Brian Benjamin.
I'm going to support him too.
Now, but in this city, the second highest ranking elected official in the city, the public advocate's name is Jumaane Williams, who we also ran and helped him get elected. And anybody who, you just go Google Jumaane.
But I'm just trying to say how that's going to get Black people free, though.
Yeah, okay, but we know, come on, Jumaane.
That's what they say. Well, I'm saying you got all, we heard that. Yeah, they got some stuff. But is that going to get Black people free?
Right. So we're responsible for getting Black people free by ourselves.
You're supposed to. You on the front line.
That's
you know, you Tamika.
But Jumaane Williams.
Is that going to get Black people free?
You crazy. But Jumaane Williams, yet another person who was in the city council, and because of him, the city has a crisis management system that actually helped to reduce violence in epic proportions in the city. First of all, we're talking about now maybe $40 million that is being designated for formerly incarcerated people, health services, jobs, and all types of programs, legal services.
But is that going to get Black people free, though?
All of that are coming out of the city council because of people like Jumaane Williams and also city council member Fernando Cabrera, excuse me. So, and we could go on. We could talk about a bunch of people. Folks who are now running. Vanessa Gibson is now running for Bronx Borough president. These are our people. People
Shout out
who
to
have
Vanessa
done
Gibson.
Amazing things in the city of New York and in the state of New York, and it just got to the point where we're actually able to do even more. We had just been trying to clean it up and get some people out and new people in. Now we're at the place where we can actually pass progressive laws and progressive legislation in the city. So back to my question of the day, because we went all the way around from that.
Just to get back.
To get back to it. The city council signed a bill ending qualified immunity. Because just so we know, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is a federal bill that, by the way, President Joe Biden, when he did his state of the, I think it was a 100-day address just the other day, he stated that he wanted to see The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed by May 25th, the anniversary of when George Floyd was murdered. That's what he said, and we're going to hold him to that.
Let's go.
But that's federal legislation. That includes ending qualified immunity, and there are many, like Congresswoman Cori Bush and others, who have said that they will not sign a bill that does not deal with qualified immunity. And for folks who are listening who are saying, what is that? It means that you will be able to sue a police officer directly.
He gonna come out his check, come out his pension.
That's right. So that they will have to pay if they participate in an issue where someone is abused or murdered in an incident of police brutality.
That's right.
Okay. So that, yes, it is a federal legislation that we want to see get passed. But cities and states do not have to wait. Colorado, as a state, just ended qualified immunity. Teslin Figaro always reminds me, Colorado as a state. New York City Council voted to pass an end to qualified immunity, and when they sent the bills to the mayor, because see, folks don't be understanding all the details.
There's a
process.
process.
When they sent the bills to the mayor so that the mayor could sign all the bills and say, okay, I agree to all of this, and send it back, he did not send the qualified immunity bill back signed.
So that's why we got to fight.
So that means that the voice of the people was just stripped from us.
And that's what the problem is for me, from these government officials. Like, you work for us, you know, and if the people are telling you that qualified immunity does not fit the needs of the people, then how are you going to continue to tell us that it does? You know, and I think that's the reason why, you know, the mayor is on his way out.
Well, he was going to be out anyway.
Yeah.
Because his time is up.
His time is up, but I'm saying he need to go. He really just need to go now.
Yeah, a lot of people feel that way.
He's really in the way. And at this point, it's like, listen, man, we've seen what we dealing with police, and we realize that qualified immunity is one of the things that has shielded them and protected them. There's no real responsibility. There's no real consequences. When you understand that when you harm someone and you physically abuse and you murder someone, that you can't get paid and that it's going to come out your check and you're not going to be able to survive and feed your kids and all those things, then you think twice.
That's right.
When there's no real consequences to things, then you continue to move on because the same taxpayers that you're killing are going to pay for you killing them. So that doesn't really make much sense.
No, you got to say that again because people may not understand that.
The same taxpayers that you killing are going to pay for you to kill them.
Well, but you got to explain what that means.
So that means the money that is being allocated to the families who win these civil suits come from taxpayers' money.
That's right. In many cases. I mean, they have some insurance policies, but there's still a large portion.
There's a large portion that comes from taxpayers' money. So there's no consequences for that individual who takes the life or beats and abuses on a taxpayer.
That's right.
So that's what we're saying. So at this point, man, you know, come on, de Blasio. You've been bullshitting for long enough, man. Get out the way, man. Stop blocking stuff. We tired of fighting you about stuff that we want.
Not only are we fighting him about stuff that we want, this is what he said he was going to be about when we voted for him.
That's what they all said. I
don't listen today. It's not the day.
This ain't the day.
It's not the day.
Lord,
so you know, it's just I'm like now we got to go to work on De Blasio again. And
we got to go to work on a whole lot of people.
Yeah, we do. And you know what, Mice? I actually really, really like De Blasio as a person. This is somebody I met.
He's a nice guy.
And he's a nice guy. But I found he really betrayed.
He's a politician.
He betrayed. I mean, I raised money for him. I supported. I stumped for him. Like I was out there, and I'm like, wow. And now. And by the way, there was another man running, Bill Thompson, a black man who I was more in support of, but unfortunately it didn't work out. And they also asked Billy is what we call, but Bill Thompson, they asked him some questions about police brutality and some other issues. And I felt like he didn't hit it hard enough. And De Blasio was like, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, he
was
like,
on
boom,
the
boom,
point.
boom, boom, boom.
He was marching with us.
Marching.
He was out there. So, because some folks will say, yeah, well, we said the same thing about this one and that one. No. De Blasio was with us.
Yeah.
He was doing. He was
Played
out
the
there
game.
when we were doing Occupy the Streets.
Played the game,
sleeping
didn't
out
he?
all night,
That's right.
marching to end stop and frisk 50,000
like-
people on Father's Day
right.
down Fifth Avenue, going to
He was
Bloomberg.
dating you. It's like, dude,
he was in
he
it.
came, he dated you, he brought you chocolates, he picked you up. He said, yo, I love you. Boom, I'm telling you.
He used to be in Jamani's position that he's in now. He
Everything.
was the public advocate.
And he was there. You took him on a date, and he said yes. And then he didn't call back.
No, he called back. He called
back and said, yeah,
But
but
now
this
he's
ain't
got
gonna
a
work.
baby on me.
I got a baby.
And
baby
you know what I
on-
mean? He got two other
other
families that we found out
And you're like,
about. It's
damn,
like,
you had
yo,
the
really,
chocolates.
dude? Seriously?
Listen,
Wow.
man, this is what I realized the politicians.
And he stole
is.
my credit,
Everything. He did what he did.
used my social security number.
I realized the banana in the tailpipe thing is really serious, man.
Yeah.
We keep falling for it. Not again though. I'm on him now.
No, but you just gotta stay. We have to stay on top.
No,
of
we're
them.
gonna stay on top of them. But I understand. My thing is this. What I realized, I was having this conversation yesterday, right? We have to understand what to expect from politicians, because
Right.
they still politicians, right?
Right.
So if they promise you 100 things, we're gonna fight for 20, because that's the reality. And we're gonna try to get the next 80 out of the next 4 people that we vote in, because we ain't gonna get 50, 60. The reality is fight for 20 and 30. Expect for 100% every
fight
day,
100%.
but expect 20%, because that's the reality that we live with. That's what politicians do. That's what this system and this system and structure was really never geared toward giving us equity and justice and equality, right? So as we incrementally get it piece by piece, that's what we have to expect. We can't like I tell people all the time, nobody we vote in is gonna give us freedom. It ain't gonna get black people are not gonna get freed by the vote. What we're going to do is get incremental change and incremental evolution, and we utilize that incremental change and evolution, and we add it to what we do on our own.
Yeah.
We add it.
Because our communities still have to operate.
Exactly.
The communities still have to
Because
operate.
we still got to operate within the
right.
system.
The hospitals need to work.
So those
you
things
need
gotta
a
happen.
grocery store. These are things that still have to happen. And therefore, these elected officials, you have to keep, until they do away with the elected officials in America, which is not going to happen anytime soon.
We got to.
You got to make sure that the ones that are in there are people that you can push their buttons and make them do the things that you need them
Some
to
of the
do.
things.
And it may not be all of it, but I'm not willing to allow any area around me to go uncontrolled where my voice at least is not a part of the process. So that's the deal with that. But anyway, so my favorite segment is the Change Makers segment.
That's right.
And
one of mine too.
we have a great brother who is coming to us today. His name is Amen Ra, but he is better
Amen
known
Ra.
as Principal Ra.
Principal Ra. Okay.
Compton.
From Compton.
That's what I'm talking about. So he's the founder of the University Pathways Public Service Academy. He is known to be a revolutionary educator, and he's with the Compton Legacy Foundation. Now, this man is changing the world in education, and we know that Compton is not one of those places where they like to educate our kids,
Yeah,
right?
especially not the regular school system.
Right, that's right. So you have to actually create your own, which is what you were talking about earlier. You said, hey, we need to work the elected officials that we have, because first of all, we have to shake their money, their pocketbooks out and get the budget so that we can use our taxpayer dollars to create things for ourselves. But we have to use the system that currently exists and reduce its influence in our communities as much as possible. But still, since it exists, we have to have our feet in it and make sure that we have control over, and at least a huge part of our voices are heard in those spaces, while at the same time creating our own.
That's
and
right.
Principal Ra has figured out how to create an educational component for our communities, where we can, for us, by us, FUBU. To educate our own kids. So we're happy to have Principal Ra with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Peace, King.
Hey, no, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be in this space. And just thank you for the platform. And thank you for what you guys do to advocate for our communities and put it out there in a way for our young people to connect with. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Well, thank you, man. We want to always celebrate brothers and sisters from our community that are doing things to uplift and be revolutionary and help our kids, have a better chance than we did. So we want to salute you, man. So give us some background. You founded this university, Pathways Public Service Academy. Like, how did you get to this? What is the process
Absolutely.
it took?
Absolutely. First and foremost, we go by the U because we know University Pathways Public Service Academy is a long name. So we go by the U.
The U.
And I was the youngest principal to be the founder in the second largest school district in LAUSD. And how this came about was I'm born and raised from the city, Watson, Compton. If you know about the West Coast, it's the hub and the dub. So to create a school in which I came from, in which the city I come from was a dream come true. So really, the concept of the school is under my ideology is we can't, if we grant the system permission to feed us, then we also grant them permission to starve us, which is coming from education.
Amen.
So it was important for us to have some kind of ownership, so we have autonomy, so we could teach our young people how to go out in the world and make a real change. So I sat down with those who were bringing the funding in the capital, and they said, like, typically schools, they have a mascot with lion, tigers, and all that. But me growing up, I said, no, we got to be a change agent. Our mascot is called the change agents because I want young people to, if I call them that every single day, then they're going to believe it.
Right.
That's right.
They're going to go out there and they're going to make a difference. So when they see an authentic leader, I was the young, I opened the school at 29, I'm 34 now. They can see a young Black man that come from the same streets, that have the same struggles, that can deliver the message in the same way, but also teach them about capital markets, teach them about understanding colonialism so they can figure out how to navigate capitalism, right? So this knowledge, this sacred knowledge that we want to provide for them came to just being an educator in a district, no lie, shout outs to LAUSD for believing and taking a chance on a young principal to be the founder, to write the plan. And I'm proud to say that right now we got a 100% graduation rate.
Celebrate that. Let's clap that
Wow,
up, man. We
that's
appreciate
amazing. 100% graduation rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we opened the school in 2018, and now we're here. This is our first graduating class this year.
So we're talking today about COVID-19 and the impact on our kids, particularly in the realm of education. And if you're a good educator, then you know that you can't just deal with books, reading, what they say, reading, writing, arithmetic, but you also have to understand the mental capacity of our youth and what this pandemic has done. We see violence is up, clearly, suicide is up. It's actually pretty traumatizing watching some of the videos that are out there showing what's going on in our own communities as a result of what we believe is isolation. People, the poverty rate has risen, all of that. So what have you, first of all, what are you finding? I mean, the stat is that our kids will lose somewhere around a year, shifting from in-school learning to remote learning, and people not having the technology that they needed and all of that. So give us some insight on what you have found throughout this pandemic, and then moreover, what have you been doing to try to balance all that's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I would start off with what my father told me: the best cure to any disease is prevention. And being an educator, I'm trauma informed because I have a lived experience. So prior to the pandemic, we built the school based off of trauma informed practices, based off of building a culture where our kids felt love. So when the pandemic happened, we were able to, I always say a visionary leader, we was able to see some of the things prior to it. So we were able to build a virtual kind of culture where our kids are posting on Instagram and they're coming on Instagram live, feeling connected. I always say to educators too, we at our school, we're high school, we don't focus on our kids trying to identify a job. We want them to identify their purpose, right? We want them to identify their gift and share it with the world. So what we found is that critical hope hit hard when the pandemic hit. The loss of critical hope. People want to say loss of academic. It was the loss of hope, because hope started to linger in. And when in the idle mind, now you start to lose it more. Now it's like, I don't want to read. I don't want to do math. I don't want to do arithmetic. I don't even want to do an elective. So we had to provide critical hope. And we did that by bringing in and having, I don't know if you guys remember the Don't Rush Challenge, trying to focus on joy, because when you find joy and you connect it to your purpose for our young people, then that is an avenue and a pathway for their gift. And then when you're gift driven, then you can find ourselves having a still 100% graduation rate, still kids wanting to come to school virtually, still kids feeling connected. So, you know, it's not always about the arithmetic, it's about how you feel and providing that critical hope. Because the pandemic created what's called hope deferred, where they tried to ignore the realities of trauma, the digital divide, and all those type of things, which made a lot of young people fall in a spiral. So I would say that, you know, shout outs to my teachers. They are some revolutionary educators who put boots to the ground to connect with young people so they can feel a sense of belonging.
I really identify with that, because I think that's the way that I utilize my voice, you know, just coming from that perspective, understanding that where we come from and utilizing our trauma and all the things that we dealt with to be able to apply that and give it to these kids so they have a better opportunity. So I just want to say I salute you for that. But one of the things that really stood out to me was that your school concurrently offers, you get a diploma and an associate arts degree when you graduate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm gonna give you context. So before we had this dual enrollment program of AB 288 in California, I was a product of a program similar when I went to high school. I graduated high school in 2005, and then shortly after, I got my AA degree, which awarded me to start teaching at a young age and become a principal at a young age. So I wanted that same thing for my young people, because we know how the system works. Our young people got to identify some things a little bit quicker. And once they identify their gift and they can navigate the system or work the system, then now they're equipped to change the system. So if at our school, we offer our students to take, and we know the 2-year college, it's the same classes you taking in high school.
Pretty much.
You know, you just take it at a community college. So why don't you take them concurrently? So now when you graduate high school, now you finish 2 years. Now you don't got to pay as much being a transfer student instead of starting as a freshman. And you can still have the luxuries of staying at a university for 4 years. So that's what we offer right now. We're proud to say that we have like 25% of our students that's in that program that's working towards that. So it's doing well.
That is amazing.
Now,
Really.
do you get a lot of support from the traditional public school district? Is there collaboration from the city, or do you feel shunned because, you know, you guys have a program that is operating probably better than the regular public school education?
Yeah, you know, we're in a unique state, because, you know, a lot of times in education, they want to find something that they can do what we call cookie cutter, right? They want to cut something. And I'm a firm believer that every community school, for it to be a true community school, it has to have a uniqueness about it.
Right.
That can't be scaled to be a replication of something, because Detroit is like Compton, but it's unique. Detroit is unique. Chicago is like Compton, but Chicago is unique. So in our school, we do have some things that we have to navigate, right? The politics, you know, street politicians, but this the politics and the bureaucracy of the district. But we do get support because we're doing something that's the data speaks, right?
The data, honey.
Yeah. So, and I will say this, our primary focus is kids. We don't focus on no test score. We don't focus on comparing our students to their white counterparts. We focus on how they can be their best self, and then the data speaks for itself. So we navigate with the district politics, and we have a saying: do what we have to do so we can do what we want to do.
It's funny you say that, because that was the same thing that made us begin, really focusing on data for the crisis management system, because people were saying it's no way
data.
that a program that specifically hires formerly incarcerated people is proven to do violence intervention, like to bring the number of violent incidents down. And we were saying, yes, it does, but they would not really flood the program with resources until the data came in from the first few months to prove that the program actually worked.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's really what we do. I mean, we have a law academy and a courtroom on our campus. We actually partner because we know this school to prison pipeline exists.
Right.
Right. So we have a law society where we teach our kids, and shout outs to OSG that I'm wearing off school grounds, that works collaboratively with supporting us. So it's just something that I feel that
Shout out to OSG. Yeah, I work with them too, man. Dope
absolutely.
organization.
Absolutely. So yeah, that organization that supports a coalition of 90 principles so we can share best practices for this to work.
Wow. So you one of the most sought after schools in your area right now. Who are some of the other people that you partner with that have made it possible? I know you need funding and things like that. So who have been some of the people who stepped up?
Yeah, so I want to give a big shout outs to the Think Watts Foundation and a rapper and an activist named Sticks. Him and I, we met through social media. I'm born from Compton, he born in Watts, and a rapper and a principal came together to bring a brand new gymnasium sponsored by the Los Angeles Clippers, a brand new weight room sponsored by Planet Fitness, where we worked on financial literacy with the Bank of California. And right now we're working on chartering a credit union at our school, because I feel that if we want to change our community and change our world, we got to change the criminal justice system. However, if we really want to change the criminal justice system, personally, I feel we have to change the educational system, because the mindset within the pipeline of education is a conditioned mindset. So partner with Think Watts, we're trying to work on the economical divide that exists in public education by charting our credit union. So now macroeconomics becomes a self-sufficient school within our community. So now we can have a self-sufficient community. So shout outs to Think Watts. Shout outs to Sticks for making an environment at our school. When you walk on our campus and you see a new gymnasium and you see a Planet Fitness and you see great paintings on the wall and murals, you're inspired. So that's one of our biggest partnerships. Absolutely.
I'm like, they got Planet Fitness. They
Bro,
got.
I need to go
Can
there.
I get enrolled in high school again? Because
Right.
my high school years, I threw that in the trash somehow. Just running the street, and I ended up in a program, to your point, where I got my GED and my associate's degree at the same time at the College of New Rochelle, and then of course went on to get my bachelor's and to do other great things. And to your point, life experience has taught me so much. But I would love to go back. If people always ask me, what would I go back and do? I would go back to high school, because you actually need to pay attention and not just be cutting school all the time like I did. But the other thing I would do is go to a HBCU, right? Like I would want to go through the experience of being at HBCU, because I just want to get on the Steppers team, and I want to go to
school days.
I want to do school days.
Yeah, man, it's dope. But I just want to ask you a question, because when you look at this school, right, and just being a young black boy from marginalized communities and understanding how hard it is for black boys to fit into the public school system, like what percentage are males in your school? Because you got 100% graduation rate, so I just want to know how many black men are graduating.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, at our seniors, 100% of our black men are graduating, right? So now let's break this down. So our total school, we have 65% women, right? Or young girls on our campus. We have 35% boys. But to your point, similar to me, like I didn't find no relevance in public school.
Nope.
I thought I was to change my circumstances. I thought I was going to be a rapper, and I thought I was going to play football. I had it made, like play for the Dallas Cowboys. Boom, get up out of here. But reflecting back, are the school systems, like they equate good schools in marginalized communities on how well we can get students out the community, right? And when I opened the school, I wanted to say, like, how well can we like transform our community, which are fundamentally different, right? So as a principal, I still teach a class. So I teach all my At Hope boys, right? All my At Hope boys, they work with me because I say, like, nobody on the campus can connect with them like I can.
That's right.
So I teach a class one day a week where I teach them just how to be a king, but also it's important for them to see how I treat my wife, how I treat my daughter, how they can see relationships in the family dynamic. So we just teach them those things. And And I think that's found the greatest success at our school.
I say that all the time, man. You got to see it to be it. And a lot of times, people talking about leaving the hood. I'm saying you got to fix the hood. I want to be able to contribute to making the lives of those who come from where I come from better.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to take my success outside where someone else be able to, reap the benefits of my success. I want the kids to see me and say, hey, I can do this because he's from here and he can do this and he actually still here. So, I really want to applaud you because I've always said that these public schools, they don't teach us the way that we need to be taught. We don't have visions of success of people that come from where we come from that look like us. I actually do consulting with schools and public schools, and I deal with teachers and deans and principals and explain. And a lot of the questions is, how can we keep, the engagement and the focus of these young black boys, because they're not engaged, and I said, what you have to do is find out what it is that they're interested in. You got to create curriculums and, lesson plans and everything around what interests young black boys. The regular public school system is not engaging us. So I want to applaud you, man, because it seems like you figured out, the formula, and it's working.
Yeah, and I know we have to wrap up, but I did want to just ask you really quickly about what you're teaching your young people in terms of who we are, where we come from, right? Because, of course, the public school system teaches from the book of enslavement. That's the first step that you hear about. You don't hear the history before we actually, were enslaved. And so I just wonder, what type of curriculum are you teaching them that connects to the struggle that we're in today?
Absolutely. So like Marcus Garvey said, right, a student that doesn't know their history is like a tree without roots. There's no way for them to grow. So for us, I grew up on Sankofa principles and the Nguzo Saba, right? To know where you're going, you have to remember where you came from. So for our young people, and specifically my teachers, we had to unpack and unlearn the system in which oppressed our minds, right? Like a lot of the teacher programs don't teach how you can connect, how to make it relevant. So what we do is we come together and we have real deep book studies. Like a book that we're covering right now is Black Appetite, White Food, and understanding like the systems of like the poverty of culture that exists at many schools, right? Like they think that they got to fix the community. So we had to unpack and unlearn those things. And we do what's called linked learning. So linked learning at our school is, see, when we went to school, you had math in isolation, English in isolation, and you just went to your individual class. At our school, we do what's called linked learning, where you will get a project, and then now it's linked to all your classrooms. And I'll just give you a quick link on one of our case studies is we study environmental racism. So we're in Watts, so we go in our study our environment. So you may get this in English class where it's like, all right, we're going to look at some research, and in math, they're going to be looking at where are the locations and mapping out the different liquor stores, looking at inform centers, looking at those different things. And then we took them to the field trip to UCLA where they start to do the same thing. How many parks is in this area? And then they have to have a contrast. And then in their science class, history class, they talked about the rise of the Roman Empire and a democratic system and different things like that. So they start to see how legislation and things start to structure. In their science class, they start to look at epigenetics and DNA and how to do fingerprints. And then after that, they built up those skills. And then we did a murder mystery, right? We did a murder mystery on our campus. And they had to use all those skills together to come up and infer and come up with evidence and claims about what happened. So that's like our environmental racism. And then we do crime scene investigation, and then they go and act it out in the courtroom. So
wow. I need let me get a month. I need a month. Like, I want to go to class.
I need to be matriculated. I need me a little ID. Give me an ID.
Yes.
I'll cut my beard and everything.
We can fit.
Well, I want to say thanks again for having you, man. You're doing an excellent job. Unfortunately we got to end this, but continue to work, man. You're doing the work that needs to be done. Principal Ra, one of our change makers, University Pathways Public Service Academy, revolutionary educator. Keep doing what you do, man.
I appreciate y'all.
Peace
appreciate you.
I meant to say that, and thank you so much for my book, state of emergency is going to be on campus. I should have said that on air, but it's cool. I'll make sure to write it in the caption. Thank you so much, brother.
I've been in touch with Jamila, so we're working on. We're buying 350 for our school.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Listen, Black folks are going to make my book a success. And that's what I always wanted. And I appreciate it so much, brother. I really do.
Yes, sir.
Keep going. We're rooting for you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, King.
Right.
Appreciate you.
All right, y'all.
New York is obviously home to us, and we were educated in New York City educational system. So whenever we get to talk to people who understand our hometown, we're like, give me more, give me more.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot to unpack.
It's a whole lot to unpack.
As you would say. And today, our guest, she wears a few hats, but one of them is very high level within the administration in the Department of Education. So, but today, we're not speaking from that hat. I just had to mention that because Black women need all their flowers all the time. And Black people.
All the acknowledgement.
Yes, all the acknowledgments. It takes us a lot to get to these high level positions, but we want to have the real conversation today. And when you speak on behalf of an institution, it's a little different, so that's not what we're doing today. Today, we're speaking to Dr. Mauricière DeGovia as a leadership strategist and an educational expert. You are,
expert.
You're an educator. You're an expert in this area. And I'm happy to have you with us today. We're happy to have you on set.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor and a pleasure.
You would be probably the third person.
This is probably our third in-studio guest.
During this
pandemic. COVID had us everywhere outside, so it's good to be up close and personal with people who we admire and who are doing the work that we want to celebrate.
And the feeling is sentimental and also mutual. Thank you so much. I love your work too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me start off by thanking you for supporting State of Emergency, for reading the book. You got a pre-copy of a pre-release copy of the book and had an opportunity to really check it out. And I appreciate the feedback and also just your willingness to try to include it in some of your work that you're doing. So thanks a bunch. So the schools have been closed. First of all, are the schools really open? Are the children, are they in the seats?
In the seats.
Every day?
Okay. Yes.
So what does that look like?
What it looks like is New York City has reopened. We are fully open. Elementary, middle, and high school schools are open. Children get to attend, right? Parents were allowed to opt in. So we actually have more children in now than we did, let's say, at the beginning of the school year.
Okay.
Right? So a few things that have allowed for that. One is just an understanding of what creates good health and safety measures, right? Like, how can I be safe? Because as a parent, that's your number one concern, right? I want to send my child back. I want to create some degree of normalcy or defining of this new normal and getting our children back. And that was the biggest priority. So at this point, all schools are open.
Okay.
Right? Are all children back? No.
Okay.
But the parents who have opted in and wanted their children to come back, they've had the option and they're there.
Okay. So one question. Do you guys have the COVID test? Like, are there, for the administrators particularly, and I know we're not speaking from a DOE perspective, but just teachers in general across the nation, are they doing COVID testing on a regular basis?
Yes.
Okay.
So within New York City, we do have testing and tracing going on for students and staff who are in place. Look, we might be done with COVID, but COVID's not done with us.
Okay.
Right? So that's just a brutal truth. So the parents who have said, yes, I'm going to opt in, yes, I'm going to send my child back, that is a part of the agreement that you're having your child tested. A lot of Department of Education employees have also gone for the vaccination. I mean, we can't mandate that. Like, that's a personal choice.
Yeah.
But people have, taken on these measures to help, again, just reacclimate and get back to what we would consider, what we formerly knew as normal, even though it's never going to be the same quite again. Yeah, right? But the idea is we know that our kids learn best when they're back in person.
I truly believe that. So from your point of view, how many, not your point of view, but what percentage of children would you say are back in?
I would say maybe a little less than 50%.
Okay. So what are the measures that you're taking? Are you doing homeschooling for those who opt out?
Right. So you have remote learning.
Remote learning, I apologize.
Okay,
remote learning.
And this is across the nation because we're not talking about New York specifically. Across the nation.
You've seen school districts take on the idea of either like a hybrid model where some children are in person and some children are remote. You've seen school districts that are fully open, right? Depending upon...
And it's mandated that your kid come back.
Yeah, your kid comes back. So schools are, I think it depends on community, demand, parent voice, which is something that's really been important. I know for me, thinking as an educator, I'm listening to the community. Like, I need to know what parents really want to see happen. Like, what are their concerns? Where are we missing the mark? Sometimes those conversations can get contentious, but it's in the contention that you actually get the answers.
So when we bugging, as parents, we wilding out. That's when
taking notes. I'm like, I hear this because I'm a parent myself. Right?
Okay.
I have an 8-year-old.
Another hat.
Another hat. I have an 8-year-old and I have an 11-year-old, and they're both in public schools, right? So I'm clear what it's like to be in a meeting. Like, this was in the height of COVID, right? I know what it's like to be in a meeting upstairs, and my son is in the hallway, and my daughter's in the living room, and everybody's on remote, and the internet goes down because the expander wasn't working. I'm clear what it looks like, and I'm an educator, and I was like clicking and rocking myself. So so unless you've had that experience. Right, and then there are parents who are dealing with other experience. We have families who are living in shelters. We have families who are living in temporary housing. So the empathy level has to go up a whole notch and be also able to not take it personally, but let me hear your story, Mom. We got Mother's Day coming up. If you really want to honor mothers and like single moms who are in these situations with their children, knowing that if you got 5 kids, you need 5 devices.
That's right.
Right? You can't be sharing devices.
No.
One child might be in high school, another 2 might be in middle school, 2 might be in elementary, 1 might be in early childhood, and everybody gets to learn, right? So a lot of it has also been educating teachers, administrators around their own social emotional awareness. Where are you in your empathy meter, right? And the dynamic that we're also up against is that teachers and educators and administrators, they too need some empathy, right? We all heard the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, but I always say, who's in the village? And during this season, for me, it's been around a 360 approach, like all the way around to all stakeholders have to be well, right? So that our children are well. We have focused a lot on our kids, but in order for our children to learn, in order for our children to get access, in order for our children to really be able to ride this wave, the social emotional piece must be in place.
It must be.
I think prior to COVID, we would say things like, order precedes learning. Now I would say like social emotional awareness precedes learning. Yeah. So that parent who comes to you frazzled, right? And then let me say this, even though we say schools are open, if there's a certain amount of cases, schools have to be responsible and say, you got to close down.
Wow.
So you may be on a drop of a dime going right back to remote. So that's not because the school systems are horrible, bad people, but we are also navigating and negotiating through this pandemic, which no one has done before. It's that type of flexibility. We also gotta, hug parents. I'm gonna use the word hug. Hug them through because I gotta go to work.
Right. I gotta go to work.
Like real talk. I gotta go to work, and now you're telling me the school's closed because there was a case. Does my kid have it? Now it just I live with grandma. It just spirals. So my number one job has been listener. I gotta hear what your story is because I know my household is not your household.
Well, first of all, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
I'll take that. Happy Mother's Day to you as well.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yes, Mother's Day. So, just listening to this, right? I know that it is affecting the teachers as well as the students. When you started to open the schools back, what did you notice was the biggest takeaway that was impacted? Did you see children were having a problem getting back into the groove of just going to school?
No, kids are so happy to be back in public school. They are.
My niece is so happy.
They are so happy.
My sister said to me today that she felt like my niece could have been on borderline depression. Like she was really worried about what was happening to Skylar because she was home. First of all, my mother had a stroke and Skylar became the caregiver. She was like the extra hand in the house because my mom was like, my dad is taking care of my mom. But my niece is a girl that's home. So she's like, I don't want to talk to him about certain things. So Skylar. And of course, my niece got in there and did a good job. But after a while, her own friends, like what happens to your life? You become grandma and grandpa's best buddy. Right.
It's very crazy because for me, like school is such an intricate part of childhood.
Yes.
When you think about all of the most important things that happen to you, especially from grade school through high school, it happened in school. You
Yeah.
remember, the first argument you had in 3rd grade, the first girl you liked that was in your class, all of the things, social factors really. So when I'm looking at my sons who are 7 and 9 years old, and this whole year they weren't in school, and what they did was, go straight to this computer and play these games all day, and started losing social skills. I had to turn it off and say, "Look, we going outside.
Right.
You're gonna do something outside in the park." So just I
So the
definitely
kids are
understand.
back in the groove.
Yeah.
But are they having mental health issues or?
So this is where the sensitivity comes in, right? So there's been a great push around the social emotional learning supports, right? So what do you do when a child's in crisis, right? Because remember, for some children coming back, it's jarring. And if you were, let's say you were remote, maybe you're coming back in person, which is cool on one hand, but the teachers who you may have had remotely, you may not have in person. Because teachers also have different accommodations. Some people have health measures that they're considering before they go.
Well,
back in.
600,000 people died almost.
Hello.
Now, some of them is because of the actual virus, and other parts of it is because of the care that we should have been lack thereof, right? So let's be clear about that, because I'm, really like, the numbers, we understand 600,000 people were impacted and they died, but some of it is because the systems are failing.
Yes. And that is where schools get to say, when you see a child in crisis, who are you in that? So there's been a lot of effort around training. So we're doing things like yoga and mindfulness training. So we have a program, I'm a shout out New York City for a minute.
Okay.
We have the yoga and mindfulness teacher preparation program. And in that program, what we've done is take educators, and initially, to be honest, it was about really trying to conserve money, because schools were spending a lot of money on vendors. So we wanted to have teachers within our school system who were certified and trained in yoga and mindfulness. And I cannot tell you, we finished our first cohort, which was cohort 0, last January. And talk about that, I was a part of that cohort. Timeliness was everything, because to be able to go into meetings now, and let's start off with a mindfulness meditation. Let's do the 6 movements of the spine so you can move, right? And bringing that to schools has been transformative. So the child who's in crisis, let me work with you on deep breathing. Let me calm you down. Let me let you see that your agency still lives inside of you, and that you're not a product of what you've gone through, but you're a possibility. So that's been the work. And making sure, again, that the teachers and the leaders are well positioned to think that way. Because if you are in crisis, because the adults are in crisis, some of them,
right?
Straight talk, right? So making sure that there is a wellness on the adult spectrum also can help mirror what happens. So that's one example, the yoga and mindfulness work. There's also been a lot of supports within the school culture and climate division around what happens when teachers are trained within different modalities around social emotional wellness, right? So that can look like the breath, that can look like movement, that can look like how you organize your classroom.
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes, you walk into a classroom where there's social distancing going on, right? Everybody's coming at you in a mask. You can't, you're there with your friends, but you don't see them like you used to. You can't connect with them at lunchtime.
It changes everything.
It changes all those dynamics.
Let me ask you this last question, because we unfortunately, we have more guests than usual today talking about this COVID crisis in education. And I want to get to this one point. They say we're losing a year, that our students will lose a year. So as someone who I'm sure you're working with teachers all across the country, you guys are parts of different groups that talk about this stuff. What are we missing? What do parents need to know? And how can they help their children to get this year back?
Yeah, it's a finger on the pulse, right? Tell me where my child is and how they're performing. It's really, we got to get some baseline assessments. Where are our children as readers? Where are our children as writers, as mathematicians? Help me understand where they are. Right, because for some children, they thrived in this arena of remote learning. Some kids were like, "Oh, this is awesome." I'm more. Some kids are more on point now than when they had to go in person. Maybe in person it was a long commute to get there,
right?
And now I can just turn my computer and be excellent, right? So there's that, but at the bottom line is tell me where my child is. And so the assessments that get done, so you can say your child is level in reading, your child is doing this in math. And then the connected point that you mentioned earlier, my son, right? The idea of I'm a connected parent. So I am still, even though I might be remote, even though you might be going back and things are shifting over these next couple of weeks until we get to the end of the school year, because your teacher might be different and so forth. Tell me what you're working on. Be curious about where your child is in terms of what's expected from the teachers and so forth. So that way you too have your finger on the pulse to help guide from the home. And that's how the homeschool connection gets strengthened as well.
Wow.
Well, we really want to thank you. You got to come back.
I
Because
will.
we ain't have enough time, but we just want to thank you for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you for
continue.
having me.
Thank you all for taking our kids, because when this remote learning and stuff, us having to do it ourselves was driving me insane. Daddy's school was okay, but it was driving me. I needed some more time off, and them little breaks, they wasn't enough. So we want to say
And
we
I
appreciate
celebrate the
y'all.
parents on that.
Yes.
We are with you, and that's why we had to make sure that our priority is to reopen schools. And across the country is seeing that. So I hope people are experiencing that and benefiting from it.
Wow,
Well,
thank you so much,
thank you.
Dr. Maury.
Yes.
We appreciate you so much, and we can't wait to have you back to talk more
Yes.
and really
and tell
I
us
think-
about the
I can be an
progress.
Yes.
education expert.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
we need
okay,
that
we
because
need that.
these
You
parents
got you a
need some
job.
help.
Look,
We all need
come
some
up here and
help.
advocate for a job.
That's
Look,
right.
she's
And
doing that job.
I love it.
we need community
That's right.
building, rebuilding to bring our children up to speed
Yes.
because they're not going to be able to compete on a global
Yeah,
level.
we get to write
So
our own narrative.
that's
Yeah.
right.
We have to write our own narrative. Enough of our children being marginalized as not being able to. Our children are more than capable of.
That's right.
And once we position them that way, they will win.
Oh, well, you should.
Dr. Maury.
You needed to teach me and my child.
Teach
We
me.
love you.
Teach
Thank
us.
you so much,
We
Dr.
love you,
Maury.
Queen. Thank you.
Well,
So keeping up with our theme about COVID and its effect on our schools, we have another guest. And we have Mr. Abdul Salim Hassan. He is the superintendent of schools for the East Orange, New Jersey School District and the former assistant commissioner for the state of New Jersey. How you doing today, my brother?
How you doing, sir? It's great to be here with you too.
Last year has been really tough. You know, my kids go to school in Jersey, so I understand a lot that's going on in there. Can you give us like some updates? Are kids back in school fully? What's going on in Jersey?
Well, first, again, I want to just thank you two for the work that you both do out in the community. And, I just can't thank you enough for addressing the real needs of our community. As you know, that, all school districts are totally impacted by this pandemic and COVID, and when it comes to our families, et cetera. As you have previously stated, I'm the superintendent of East Orange School District and the former assistant commissioner of New Jersey Department of Education, which oversees all the superintendents in the state of New Jersey. With that being said, we wrote the book, the manual, in conjunction with other stakeholders around the country when it came to reopening. Currently, I am reopened. I opened on April the 19th, and it is some things that impacted the urban community. So we may not have opened like some of the suburban community because of certain issues and concerns that is transparent that we can address when it comes to equities of suburban communities versus rural communities and urban communities of our needs. So it took us a while to get it open. We got it done. And we got it done in a safe manner. And that's always my goal as the superintendent, to protect the students, the families, and the community stakeholders. And it was all a partnership between our mayor, the local health department, and the school district, and, of course, our elected officials.
So can I ask a quick question? What do you think are some of the issues that affected Black and brown communities that didn't affect the other communities that you know of?
First and primary, and you heard it all over the country, it was the digital divide. That was a huge impact to our community because unlike suburban communities, they could just go out in the schools, or parents could just go buy a $300 Chromebook for a student. But when it comes to these large school districts like Newark having 30-some students, or my district having 10,000 plus students, when you're talking about buying Chromebooks for a whole school district is a whole different vision. And it takes funds to do that. When you project your budget year to year. So currently, when you're in COVID, you don't have the budget to go buy that volume of computers. But thank you to the CARES Act and all the support from the federal government and local government, we were able to achieve that. But it wasn't on the onset of July. We were supposed to open up. All of us were always planning. So when we got to September, many school districts didn't have the adequate computers because, like the things that go overseas when it comes to China, they weren't able to send the computers over to us in the ways that they usually send computers. So all of us were in a deficit of waiting for computers, which impacted the readiness of schools. So when you're sending kids home from a brick and mortar, which you're used to, going to school every day, to an online platform, you can't have an online platform if you don't have a computer. And if you don't have a computer, you can't log on to a learning management system to get inside of a classroom.
Yeah,
but
I'm sorry, and we heard, one of the other superintendent, well, excuse me, she's not superintendent. One of the other educators who was on with us earlier was speaking to, not being able to share computers, because that was a thing in a lot of households, that they were being or asked to, or had no choice but to share devices, and that doesn't work.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And if you think about when kids are home and they're supposed to be on the online platform, if the computer's with one student or one family member, what is the other family members doing when they're supposed to be talking in classes? So we were able to accommodate our students. If it's 3 students and 3 family members in the house, we were able to give them all devices. Not only are devices a conversation, it's also a Wi-Fi conversation of Wi-Fi. So that is an issue too in the urban community, because with buying all these new devices, all these new Chromebooks, new Dells, they're pulling more strength from the Wi-Fi's and everybody on these networks, which causes some of the places, the city Wi-Fi's to move slow, as well as the infrastructure inside the school district on the hybrid. So it's a lot of conversations that we didn't always see, of course, during the pandemic, that we had to address and become reactionary to.
Wow.
And I experienced that, having to do Zoom meetings and calls, and having 2 children that are on 2 separate computers, just completely taking up the Wi-Fi, and everything is pausing, and it's just not really working. So, I understand that was a real challenge for us who were, parents dealing with remote learning. But since children have been back in school, what do you think are some of the major steps that you've taken to help them reacclimate to school and keep them healthy at the same time?
My son, that's a good question, my brother. And some of that area is that we know that our students, as well as the community, has experienced real trauma during this pandemic. So the first thing we got to do is address social emotional learning, to get them back into the mindset of learning. Though, because we know, and you heard it all through the news, that the whole country is being impacted with the learning loss by far. So if we hear that the suburban communities are impacted by learning loss, rural communities are impacted by learning loss, you can only imagine the impacts to an urban community, because when it comes to assessments, usually our assessment scores are not like the suburban communities. So that learning loss is significant in our communities. So what we're doing in our communities is really focusing on after school enrichment, online platforms, as well as focus on summer enrichment for our students in person, full day. Because a lot of times when you look at summer school, for people who have kids, a lot of times it's half a day, and then you got to figure out what you're going to do. So we want to give some academics and also address some social emotional learning during that summer enrichment. So when we bring our kids back in September, that they're straight and they're ready to go to school. And
is there a plan to have actual summer school, not just in New Jersey that you know of, but across the country? Are you hearing this idea of instituting summer school to try to catch up? We've been talking on this show today about this 1-year gap that the studies are saying, and we hear on the media that our kids are going to lose 1 year, Black kids, particularly Black and brown kids, in comparison to the few months that white kids who live in suburban communities or children who are more well off, it won't be as bad. So do you think summer school is what needs to be instituted? Do you think that there also needs to be a curriculum that the parents have at their disposal to work with their kids over the summer?
I think, Mallory, that's the great point that you're talking about right now. It is definitely needed. The enrichment, and from what area that students need it. I'm opening up my summer school for pre-K to 12 for all grades. Full day for all students. I did work it out.
How you gonna pay for it?
And that's a great question. I'm very thankful that the federal government gave us, like we talked about earlier, the CARES funding. Some of the CARES funding is broken down in specific areas where you have to use it. And part of the money is used for summer enrichment and learning loss.
Wow.
So we're going to use all our money for that learning loss. Also, too, I'm very thankful that the federal government, as well as our state government, gave us some money to also address trauma and mental health. So we're going to address that. And not only just for the students, but also for the staff.
So the last thing I just want to ask is, what are we missing? As a community, what are we missing? What is it that you feel like is something that the entire community, educators, parents, or not, can be doing to help our kids?
Well, I'm always, and I see you do it all the time, advocacy is key. We need to continue to advocate for our rights, our citizen rights. And I'm talking about being very transparent with that conversation. And sometimes when you go to certain key stakeholders, you may think you don't have rights, but you do have rights. So we have to really, like they say, a squeaky wheel gets the attention. We got to continue to be that squeaky wheel to get what is needed for our communities and advocate for our rights. So I always tell parents, advocate through your local elected officials to get your just due, to make sure your students and your stakeholders get what they need. The other thing is too, we want to make sure that we're taking care of the facilities, because with COVID was all the HVAC concerns. We want to make sure not only do we comply with CDC guidelines, but we want to make sure our schools look like the schools in the suburbs, just like any other school, college campuses, all the landscaping, all when you go into malls and different places where they hire extra staff to wipe down. We want to make sure we provide all the resources that other communities have. We want that in urban districts as well.
I just want to end on this question because this is very important. I was a student athlete. And a lot of these children are going to school with athletic, abilities, and they missed the whole year. Like if you're a junior or you're a senior, and this was your last year, and you playing basketball, and you were hoping to get scholarships, like this is very serious. So is there some type of plan implemented? Because a lot, especially Black and brown communities, we don't have a lot of finances, and a lot of us are looking for scholarships and looking to be seen, and a lot of people have missed whole years of sports that have put their whole life. Parents have invested pretty much their whole career and their whole education for these kids to be able to play these sports. So is there any process or something being put in to make sure that these kids still have opportunities?
My brother, again, great question. And we were able to have sports and extracurricular activities during COVID. Our basketball team went 9-2. I was excited. We had to address the COVID CDC compliance guidelines. Our football team had a season. Our girls volleyball team had their season. We got boys volleyball. And, I'm very thankful to the New York Jets that they sponsored, in addition, girls flag football. So it's a couple of school districts that got into that. So the kids have been playing sports. The cheerleaders have been doing their part. But we also had to address anything that dealt with positive contact tracing with that. And it was very limited, but that did impact some of the season. But it's been fine. The kids are attending extracurricular activities. And also, too, we've been able to get some of our kids in to do social justice activities, definitely at East Orange Campus High School. So they've been doing amazing stuff. Our mayor has also put out a mural for Black Lives Matter. So we're addressing these things because we have to also understand that during this pandemic, we also had another current going on.
That's right.
Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And our kids are very impacted by that, because even though we see in other communities our family members or their family members being assaulted or sometimes death, but it also happened in these communities too, and it's not in the newspaper.
Yes,
so our kids are very impacted by this, and to see that type of energy on the news for weeks and weeks and weeks with COVID, that tore into the mental health of our students as well. And when you look at those who have lost their lives, from George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and Dante Wright, and many others, this is not over the work. So that level of advocacy, I always appreciate you too for the level of advocacy you do, but our students are doing it as well.
That's right.
Well, thank you, man.
Thank you so
we
much.
know you got a heart out. This was a dope show.
It was. We
Very
learned
informative.
A lot. I learned a lot.
I learned a lot, man. We talked to educators from our communities, educating our children, talking about how these disparities impact our children.
That's right.
So, it was really dope.
They were great guests.
Excellent guests.
Yeah. And you know why I love street politicians?
Why? Because it's the number one show.
Well,
that's why. Because number one show in the world.
It's the number
in the
one
world.
show
In the world.
We're manifesting.
That's right.
But also because we get to bring the type of content that we want to see.
Yeah,
right? This is what we always want.
Yeah, we get to bring the people we want, because a lot of people have to bring who they should bring, and no, we want to bring people who need to be highlighted.
Building it from the bottom.
We want to give you your roses now. We want to elevate you before the world see. We had to see this talent.
The people who are really making change.
Yeah, real
because
change
a lot
makers.
of shows are built around what big celebrity you're going to have on, and not to say that we won't have those people at different times. We've had a number
because we got friends that's celebrities and stuff.
And we've had a number of people, but I like the fact that we're staying true to who we are, and that is that our celebrity friends, they're our friends. They're not celebrities. They're our friends. You know what I'm saying? So when we bring them on, it's because they're doing something and they're impacting the world as well. But there are so many people, to your point, that need their flowers, and especially, I really
and they need to be highlighted before. They need somebody to see them help them along the way, not
Yeah,
just
yeah.
get them when they already made it.
Exactly.
there, you
Well,
know?
hey, now that's
You know,
that's
ain't that a word?
That's a word.
Won't he do it?
That's a word. But you know, and I also think that we should every 3 months at least check in with professionals about what's happening in education, because guess what? Everything else we're talking about every day, we have, you know, every week we have different shows with different content that's important. But how our students get reacclimated to the educational system is probably one of the most important things we could ever cover.
Especially in our communities. Which brings me to my I don't get it.
You don't get it. What don't you get?
You know, there's been a lot of things lately. Like, we've been overwhelmed with police brutality and, you know, and losing lives at the hands of police, and just so many different disparities that black and brown people are dealing with in this community, in the world, period. And to see black leaders and, you know, politicians actually say that America is not a racist country is some shit that I don't get at all. How do you build when you build something on racism? It was built, this America was built on racism. Slaves were brought here and built this country.
Enslaved people.
People were enslaved and brought here. And those people built this country brick by brick. So the foundation of America is racist, right? And then you look right now, we still have a structure of white supremacy that functions and profits off racism. It profits off keeping marginalized communities marginalized. It profits on the backs of imprisoned black and brown people who are the people who they enslaved in this country. So when you have black people who have actually and obviously know that, to utilize their voices and platforms to say that America is not a racist country, I just don't get it. It's not even genuine. It's not real. What happens is you make our people lose faith in you. And that's just a fact. And no matter how much you want to support and how much you respect some of the things that people have done, when you say things like that, you lose credibility. It's hard enough for us to get people to buy into this system at all.
Right.
You know, it's hard. And you want people to be successful. You want our vice president to be successful. You love
being
Cleveland.
Successful means that they would actually be able to help our community.
Be able to help our communities.
So we don't want them to fail.
So exactly, America is built on racism. That's not something the white person can tell you that.
Yeah.
You know, when you as a black man who've experienced, a black woman who've experienced racism, to say that it's not. It's just like it's not even genuine.
Well,
and
they're
people
trying
know
to
that
say that they've experienced racist people, but they're not. They're attempting to separate the country from its history.
Okay, but that's not true. Because what Kamala said was like actually an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Because she said
separating the country from the people.
No, but listen to what she said. She said, I don't believe that America is a racist country, but we have to be honest about the history of racism in this country and then talk about racism in this country now. Duh.
Yeah, but that's...
If you're honest about the history of racism in this country, then we realize that this country was built off racism. And if we're honest about the present state of racism in this country, then we honestly know that racism still is one of the major factors of this country. So if it was built on it and is still flourishing today, then America is a racist country.
But this is what I'm saying. What she is attempting to do, right, which is unfortunate because they're following someone like Tim Scott, who meant exactly what he said and how he said it, right? He ain't no uncle of mine. And I get that you're making a funny reference, but no, he's actually not. Because while Tim Scott has actually been a part of a few very progressive things like mass incarceration, dealing with trying to end mass incarceration. He's been involved in opportunity zones and a few other things that have been sort of...
I've never... See, my thing is this. Tim Scott is one of those black people, right, who just tipped the iceberg.
Well,
right?
no, but let me just finish my point. When I say involved, I'm saying that he's at tables as a part of a group of people, a group of Republicans and others who have sat down together with Democrats and said, we're going to work on these things. And so my point is that he tries to use that as a way of showing that I'm in solidarity with my community, when in fact, he supports a party and is used often as a token to speak against what Black people, the majority of us, feel and say and think, and what we are experiencing.
From my
so I don't
perspective,
play around with him.
Yeah, he usually guts most of the major things that we need in our community.
Well, he tries to do that.
That's
for
what
sure.
his major focus is every
Right.
time. He said, "Yeah, we'll give you this, but you just got to take all
But you don't need the parts
stuff
that
out."
are actually the
Gonna
most
change.
powerful.
Exactly.
And so, of course, and my point wasn't that he's done anything great. I'm saying that he's been a part of a number of caucuses, if you will, that have addressed certain issues, but yet and still none of it is operating in the ways that it needs to. Because if you don't believe that America is racist, you can't possibly pass legislation that addresses institutional and systemic racism in this nation. So, Tim Scott, I don't even talk about him much. That's my only thing I have to say about that. I voted for Kamala Harris.
Me too.
So that's who I want to talk about, right?
And that's
And
why
the
I voted, so I can have the right to talk about it and hold her
Exactly.
accountable.
And
See, I
that's
tell people
exactly
all the time, when you vote for somebody, then you get to call them out and say, oh, no, this is some bullshit.
Right. So
And we love you, but this is some bullshit, and we're going to make sure you get it right.
That's right.
We're going to sit you
Absolutely.
down
Absolutely.
because we voted for you. And my
Absolutely.
vote counts, and I need you to hear what I'm saying.
That's right.
Because you can't get this vote again if you don't hear what I'm saying.
As vice president, I have a great deal of respect for Kamala Harris, for Vice President Kamala Harris. But I still know and understand that she and Congressman Jim Clyburn, who I also have a great amount of respect for, they are a part of the institution. They are a part of a group of people who would like to believe that they can, which makes me so angry.
It's not
and it's
accurate.
one of the biggest things that I was upset about with Congressman Clyburn in terms of defunding the police, when they tried to make it seem as if because certain candidates even support or are even cool with people who support defunding the police, that's why they either lost their election or why they were struggling. And we know that it's not accurate, because look at someone like Cori Bush, Congresswoman Cori Bush, who won based upon the fact that she was 100% down, 10 toes down, defund the police. Same with AOC, same with Ilhan Omar, and the list goes on and on and on. Okay, so it's not true, because the problem is, again, being a part of the institution, is that they want, and of course you can't really become vice president without supporting and being a part of this, system, this whole thing.
World.
And what they are trying to do, what they are attempting to do, is to win over people who do not like
them.
us. They don't work with us.
And they
They
gonna
don't
vote
care
for
about
you?
our issues. They don't support you
At all?
They don't.
At all?
They do not.
They won't.
And I understand the whole, there are other Black and brown progressives who also don't like the language defund the police. They may not, but I tell you one thing, they will not vote against you because of it.
That's right.
Those people will not. The ones who will vote against you are the same people who've been voting against you.
That's a
But
fact.
those who say, well, I am progressive and I support the movement, they might say they don't like the language defund the police, but they are
Yes,
not
right.
about to say, well, that's a deal breaker and I don't support you as a result of it. So when you sit and try to equivocate, or, you try to find a way to maneuver certain things, and we've all been in those situations when you get asked questions that require you to speak to things that can be problematic the next day. You know it. And you're trying to maneuver your response. What happens is you lose so many people. And the reason why we know this is because there are other elected officials who will 100% say that this is a racist country. To your point, when the institutions are racist, the country is racist.
That's a fact.
Unless, because now the representation of our country, that's Joe Biden, President Biden, and Vice President Harris, you can change it.
That's right. You have the opportunity to change it. And I say all the time, you must change it. Like, you have to be loyal to your constituents. You have to be loyal to the voters, the people who got you in. This trying to play the middle, it's not really going to work. You know, when you ask questions that you know are going to negatively affect your base, the people who actually support you, and you sacrifice your base to try to get support from people who never supported you, it's not a winning strategy. It has never worked. It's not going to work. It never will work. It is not a winning strategy. So what I say is this: everybody who's on my Instagram saying, well, y'all voted for her. Yeah, this is what you get. Yes, you're 100% right. I voted for her. And when I voted, I told you I was going to call everybody out every time they didn't do something that made sense to our communities, because we voted them in. And everybody who voted this administration in has the right to challenge them, to tell them that they're wrong, to call them out every time. So that's why we voted for them, because we want them to understand that they have to be loyal to us. Nobody is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect leader. I know that the last administration had to get the hell out of here.
Well, they were actual white supremacists, racist,
They had
wild,
to go. The bottom
crazy
line,
people
they had to
who were
go.
running up the side of the wall, killing
Go.
people and hanging nooses on the state capitol
They
property.
had to go.
So, you know, you pick your poison. Of course, we understand that these people are not perfect.
The
Like you said,
administration,
we understand that the
structure.
structure of this country is exactly the racist structure that I'm sure Vice President Harris is working within and learning even more. When she was a senator, she knew it. But now that she's vice president, she damn sure knows that this country is dangerously oppressive and it's racist at the core. And maybe for whatever reason, and I understand the hope and vision of, well, the country, meaning that all the people here are not racist, but nobody was talking about the people. People are talking
right.
about
the country and the institutions
America
and
as
the
an
structure.
institution. That's what we're talking about. And if you want to make the distinction, what she should have said, in my opinion, is that the American people are not overall racist, but America's institutions are definitely racist and must be changed.
And listen,
That would have been,
and that's it.
She would have said that. I've been
dropped the
arguing
mic.
with a few people
Listen,
about
I'm gonna go to when you say
our
that.
system.
I'm gonna go to war with you, man. Listen, the bottom line for me is if you tell the truth, you're gonna shame the devil. And with that said, I'm not gonna always be right. Tamika D. Mallory is not gonna always be wrong. Most of the time, she probably will, and I'll be right. But we will both always, and I mean always, be authentic.
We got a few days. Go pre-order my book.
Shameless plug. State of emergency.
Emergency.
State of emergency. Salute, #1 podcast.
Thanks for joining
Hit
Street
us up.
Politicians.
Let us know if you got something you want to hear. You got some topics. We here. #1. We number one. You. Good job, son. Good job, son.
That's how we own it.